Africa and disability inclusion advocates for a groundbreaking Able to Serve town hall broadcast live on Arise Television. Date, Monday 22nd April 2024. Time, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Hear inspiring stories and interactions on how we can create a more inclusive government together. Join the conversation via Zoom. Able to Serve Town Hall Meeting is brought to you by TAF Africa with support from the MacArthur Foundation.
Some of the problems around them are legion. The assistive devices are expensive. Job denial is there. Employers' negative attitude is there. And now the political and economic space is also very discriminatory. So I'd like to welcome all of you. We're going to have two panels and then engage ourselves. Let me also assure you that we might not be up to 500 in this room, but the vibration will get into over 20 million eyeballs. So I'd like to welcome all of you this evening. And this is how we'll kick off. The very special man that has put all of this together. He's a founder and CEO of TAF Africa, an expert in policy development and advocacy, a human rights activist who sits on various committees of the United Nations and the African Union, very, very committed to inclusion and our political development. He's also a child of God, so he's a pastor. So I love him, that side of him that loves God is also driving this process. I'd like to welcome Mr. Jake Ekpele to kick off this conversation.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed viewers at home, today is a very auspicious day, and it gladdens my heart to not only welcome the teeming audience outside this room, but the champions of disability that are gathered here tonight. Tonight, we want to make a bold statement that persons with disability will no longer sit at the sideline and watch others take position in governance and rule us. Yes, we want to be ruled, but we also want to be in position to rule. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight presents an opportunity for every one of us to contribute and make a bold statement that we have come of age, and we are not just persons with disability, but we are able to serve. Not just able to serve, but much able to lead. Ladies and gentlemen, may I, on behalf of the board and management of TAF Africa, an organization that envisions an inclusive society that empowers and embraces persons with disability, giving them opportunity to participate in socio-political and economic activities in Africa. This is our vision. This is what we go to bed and wake up doing, and that's why we are here today. I want to take time out to thank all our friends. Many of you, we called you less than 48 hours and you agreed to serve. At the appropriate time, we will do vote of thanks, but right now, we're thanking you for coming and we're declaring these events open. Thank you for being part of history. Thank you that you have made yourself available to serve the most underserved community in our nation. Let me end by saying that the day you were born, you cried, and everyone around you rejoiced. Live your life that the day you die, you will rejoice, and everyone around you will cry. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a life of contribution. But I'll leave you with this question. Whose life have you touched? What kind of obituary will you write when you are alive? Who will cry because you died? I'll leave you to answer this question as I welcome you once more, but also to thank the management of Arise for being a worthy partner. Ladies and gentlemen, we are able to serve. Thank you.
The applause didn't sound like the people that are ready to serve. Thank you. And so we'll kick off with the conversation, but I think he has actually given us a few things that will guide our conversation. How do you want to be remembered when you go? And I'm very sure such thoughts are not for people who are in this room, but for the millions that are watching us at home, who we want to them to think, how do we engage this very special class of Nigerians and make them part of the national conversation? So we'll be moving into the first panel, which will be taking a look at identifying barriers to participation of people with disability in governance, the role of CSOs. I want to welcome here our panelists. The former country director of Action Aid is here with us. I'd like to welcome here Enne Obi. You're welcome. Let me welcome here the man who ensured that YEGA is helping us shape our electoral process. Mr. Samson Itodo is here with us. I welcome you. And then finally, let me welcome Vanessa Gregory, former program Nigeria Women Trust Fund. It's okay. It's all right. I'll probably take my seat from here. And I'll probably want to kick off with NLB. You've been extremely active in the political space and ensuring that our people have their rights. Programs like this create awareness. They tell our government, they tell people who are within the political space the desires of the people with special needs. But beyond creating awareness, beyond letting them know what they are going through, how do you think they can have meaningful participation in our political process? And what are the barriers around which they operate?
Thank you very much. If you permit me, I'd like to step up a little bit to say a big thank you to Jake Ekwele, who has been a colleague for decades in the civil society space, and also my other colleagues here, and to say a big thank you to Arise Television, TAF Africa staff, and also the staff of Transcorp, the Transcorp management, because they contributed to making this event possible. Jake told me the details of how they got, into the partnership. So I just want to come to say that we have come a long way. There has more than about 20 years ago, not a lot of people paid attention to those who are living with disability. But organizations started, we had to start with the different groups together and to start with coalitions. We had to manage, you had to build capacity for the leadership of the different groups, and then to bring them together and to create awareness about when you are having activities, do you really have anybody with disability who is in your activity? And so in program planning and different ways, and then, up to when I went into ActionAid, and we really made it a struggle, a sort of a deliberate way of going to say that every activity that you go, you have to make room for those who are vulnerable. And that takes you to a lot of planning, because if you are planning, for example, if you are inviting like 5 persons with certain, disability, you have to be able to bring a second person. It means that if you are inviting 5 people, you have to bring in 10 people. And you have to cater for them. You have to make sure that all of them are catered for in the way that every individual is catered for. And a society that is not planning for its own, for its own population, because the population there's stratification of the population, and you have to be able to take care. In terms of mobilizing people and sensitizing people towards what people can do at home, there are some deliberate efforts, or activities that you can make. We came into this place now, we are looking for ramp. So people are not able to get on the stage. You go into so many government buildings, you don't see ramp. So what is the planning in a building? If our architects, Nigerian architects are constructing buildings, and taking care of that, they are not putting that kind of certification about the population in consideration. I think we have come a long way. When we go from there to elections, I think we have also made some progress, because in the last couple of elections, I want to, sometimes INEC go this way, sometimes they go that way. But when they do well, in terms of bringing in even persons with disability as officials that are now getting involved, and then taking care of having, the special lines, for persons with disability or, other vulnerable persons, that has also improved. In a deliberate effort, when you are talking about leadership, you can't tell me that you want to, okay, we took a long way, because when I was in ActionAid, we did a lot in terms of working towards having the commission. We now have a commission. It's not in getting a commission that is the issue. It's in having the provision that will take off with the commission. Do you provide them? Because, our government is fond of creating organizations. At the end of the day, they don't have the tools to work with it. And so when we are talking with our leaders, there are some deliberate efforts. You are appointing positions is by the officials, that's the political leaders. They can deliberately know, they can look for people. We have lawyers who are persons with disability. We have engineers, we have architects. We have almost in every profession now, you have persons with disability. So it's not the absence of persons with disability. Just like you said, we have 1% representation. Just like women are more than 50%. And the representation, is about 6-point-something%. And so the fact is, you are richer when you bring them in. You are not doing them any favor. When you bring them in, the quality of your decision will improve, because decisions are made in the boardroom. Decisions are made in the community. If you have a whole commission, whether it is for NMPC or for any of the agencies that is more than almost 400 agencies in Nigeria, where are the persons with disabilities? Where are women? Today is not about women, it's about persons with disabilities. But where are they? So leaders can take that deliberate effort. We are not talking of elections yet. An election too, TAF Africa, we had, I was really happy to have been part of the town hall meetings that we had. We brought all of persons with disability that contested election, came together to share their ideas. There were lessons that were shared. And so we have leaders who can take deliberate decision. You have the power to take a decision. Don't misuse it, because you only have it when it's there. And so I think our political class, they're really missing certain things. They're missing in the inclusiveness, because the African adage that says, he who wears the shoes knows where it pinches. You cannot tell of how persons with disability move. You cannot tell how persons who are hearing impaired or visually impaired, how they live their lives. They have to tell you, because you don't know. And so I think a lot can be done. Some things have been done. But I think we have a political, the political class has a lazy attitude about including those who matter.
I'll come back to you later about how those barriers evolve. But Samson, let me come to you. And she alluded to this earlier. To me, I call it tokenism. We talked about giving them 1% while they constitute 16% or over of our population. Now, are we talking about charity here, or are we talking about people who are actually qualified or have experience?
Well, thank you. First, let me register my deepest appreciation to Jake and TAF Africa for this invitation, but also MacArthur for supporting this effort and all the partners. Really great to be part of this discussion. At a time when we have a Nigerian state that believes that democracy is for some people, by some people, and for some people. And not a time when democracy is conceived and practiced as government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And when you have a state that is structured in that line, discourse around opening up the space for persons with disability is seen as charity. And it's really sad. So if you look at the last election, look at the number of persons with disability that ran, and then you ask yourself, do the Nigerian people actually believe, and I'm not speaking about the elite, do Nigerian voters believe in the capacity of persons with disability to actually lead? My answer is no. Because how come the people who presented themselves to lead didn't get the kind of vote and support? So when we think about able to serve, the message isn't just to the political class. It's to we as Nigerians. How do we treat persons with disability who are in our families, who are in our immediate community? Because the same treatment that we show is what informs how the state also approaches this discussion around persons with disability. So for those who are part of this discussion and those who are watching, you need to see persons with disability differently. That the whole notion of inclusion is derived from a particular principle, that all men and women are equal. They are born equal. They have innate rights that God has vested in them, and they should not be excluded by virtue of some form of disability that they have. It's a general principle. And so if you're thinking about interventions that seek to level the ground for everyone, then don't see it as charity. First, you need to see it as a question of right, that these people have a right. Because as citizens of Nigeria, there are constitutional rights that they have. And so the human rights question, is fundamental. The second is the developmental question. That no society, and you mentioned clearly, any society that wants to thrive and succeed, right, you need to include everybody, including persons with disability. So it isn't just about charity, it's about whether we as a country want to succeed. And Madam Ene has said it. If you look even in this row, I bet that there are persons with disability who will make better economic decisions. There are persons with disability who would provide solutions to our leadership problems. There are persons with disability who write and can speak better than people who we claim are able. And we need to give them that opportunity, not because we are doing them a favor. No, it's a right. They are entitled to it. And I hope that we get to a state where our political leaders, including our political parties, that enough is enough. Appointing advisors as special as advisors of PWDs, heads of PWDs in a political party, I think that's in the medieval time. That's old school. That shouldn't. I think any political leader or political institution that speaks with pride that their own indicator of including persons with disability is appointing persons with disability in positions that are limited for persons with disability. I say it's a shame, and we should stop it. We need to go beyond that, give persons with disability critical positions because they have the capacity to do so.
I totally agree with you. I just looked into the audience and I can see several of them. I can see lawyers here. Barrister Rex is here. Chike Okogu is a man I've known for over 25 years with a PhD, and he's as qualified and efficient like any other Nigerian anywhere in the world. And so there's no point in the discrimination. But let me come to you, Vanessa. One of the things that I think could begin to drive the conversation will be the impact of CSOs in pushing the conversation. What are the strategies CSOs should employ to make sure Nigerians get this message?
Good evening, everyone. And I would like to echo the thanks from my other fellow panelists. When it comes to the work of CSOs, I feel like there's already a lot being done. But we need to move away from advocacy. We need to share success stories. We need to look deeper into the legislative ways in which we can advocate for persons with disabilities to partake in different levels of governance. You know, we hear about the inclusive quotas and, you know, people being included based on their disabilities, the tokenistic positions. I think it has come to a time now where we need to take a stand and we need to show that if there are requirements for certain positions, persons with disabilities do meet these requirements and should be given the opportunity to partake in these certain positions. We also need to look at the shortcomings of these positions. So we have mentioned physical barriers such as access into various buildings. We need to look at producing Braille for people with visual impairments, making auditoriums and other places where we will all interact able for the hearing impaired. We need to look at reducing these historical systemic barriers that are seen as things that do not allow persons with disabilities to participate. And CSOs do help in this by speaking to people. And again, as Samson said, you know, we talk about it in rooms like this, but when we leave this room, how do we interact with other persons with disabilities that we meet? You know, there's the social stigma, the societal aspect of it. If I see you as a person different to me, I will treat you differently. So we need to, you know, go through the inherent, I forget the word. I'll skip the word. But what I'm trying to say is we need to see each other as equal and treat each other in that manner so that what we are trying to achieve, an inclusive society, becomes possible.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Thank you. And I'd like to come back to you and drill down further on CSO participation. If people look at your number of years as an activist, you deserve to be a field marshal. You've done tremendously well. So how can CSOs create the leveling playing field for PWD people?
I think we are trying as much as we can. CSOs are not government. Civil society organizations, if we tell individual CSOs how we manage to try to secure funding, just to allow a gathering to happen. And I want to come back to looking at the strata itself, that if you are planning for the population, there are different segments of persons with disability. So we need to take it down to even primary school level Are you developing from that level? That you are looking at those, because many people are hiding their children at home. Until it becomes almost too late, some parents, because their children have disability, in different forms, they are not going to allow them to come out. Either boys or girls, until they become adults. But I've seen a lot. And we also need to look at disability. Disability can happen at any time. It's not because it came from birth or something. I went to school with a twin. I think they come from Abeokuta to the University of Jos. They were not blind from birth. But after primary school, as they were going in secondary school, they detected that they were not seeing the board well anymore. One after the other, both of them became blind. But we went to school together, and they did fantastic. They were English. They graduated from the Department of English. I used to go to read for them. One day, they visited me in my hall, and we were coming out. And NEPA took light. Everybody is NEPA. NEPA took light, and the whole place was pitch dark. I couldn't move anywhere, and they said, "Close your eyes and let's direct you." They held my hand. Their own disability became an ability because they know the hostel, they know everywhere without seeing. And so they were able to lead me until we got to their room, and then light came. How else could I have gotten there? Because with me, without light, I just stay there. Or now you have this. We never had, the phones at that time. So they led me. And then there was a time we organized a meeting, a big meeting, and we had about 400 persons with disability, new persons with disability because of the insurgent in the north. Some people lost their limbs, whatever, in different forms. And so suddenly they found themselves. They did not have disability. A lot of people have become, they have disability now because of accidents and different forms. Sometimes you cannot see anymore as you get older and all of that. And so it's some planning that you have to plan for inclusiveness. For civil society organizations, most of the coalitions that one has led or have created, we made sure that persons with disability had a space. In the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, for example, we have TAF Africa and a couple of other organizations that were there, and we made sure that we streamline in every planning that we're doing, that everybody take a space to talk about persons with disability. Are you organizing? And some of us who may have served in the INGOs or, with also Yaga Africa when they are dealing with the youth, they also include persons with disability. And so for our own is to continue to advocate that inclusion, that they are able to include people, persons with disability. And then when you are talking of, Samson was talking about whether the Nigerian people are ready for those with disability in the service. Even those who are able, who have nothing to do with disability, who may have won the election, did they listen to them? Was the system genuine enough to tell the story of those who went out to campaign and contest? And then you are now coming. And then I need to also bring out the fact that when you are a man and you are with disability, you are a man. When you're a woman with disability, when you're a woman, already there is disability. When you're a woman with disability, and then it is double. And then when you're a woman with disability and you are living with HIV or any of those, how many? So there are so many things. And I give you an example of one time that a lady we were talking to, and she was, gender-based violence. There's a lot of gender-based violence when it comes to persons with disability. And the lady told us, if I tell you the truth, you are going to go to your homes. What do I do thereafter? Because the caregivers are those who are the abusers. But again, I want to come back to the issue of special assistance, the issue of the cost of governance. We have a lot of our citizens who are crawling on the floor. And both our political leaders, many of them are burying themselves in motorcades, in bulletproof vehicles, and you do not even have wheelchair for your citizens. We have at the local government level, you have at the state level, and then you have at the federal level. The meaning of governance is only when it makes a meaning for other people. And so for the civil society, we continue to intensify advocacy. We'll continue to speak. That's why we're all here this evening. and we will continue to advocate that there should be inclusiveness for every segment of the society, and we have to be able to mean it. An advisor and all of those things. You are in a state, you are a governor with advisors, and then you have commissioners. When we were growing up, it is the commissioners that were advisors to the governors. So why are you bringing colossal waste of the resources that ought to be used for the people? So the cost of governance and governance not having a meaning for the people is really is a tragedy. Thank you.
I know you're a very passionate woman. If you're allowed, you go afield. But let me go to Samson here. Samson, Yega has been driven over the years since you set it up by data. Now, I can't just take the microphone and say 1% representation from PWD people. How do you want data to drive the conversation so that we can present a scientific argument to them to say, look, these are the number of people not included?
Well, so there has been an incredible amount of work done. And so when you think about how we leverage data, to fix this exclusionary problem, first, we need to change our model of data gathering. Are we capturing the data of persons with disability? And are we capturing, the type of disability? And I know that I'll take the electoral process where we work extensively. I know TAF Africa and a few organizations have worked closely with INEC. And when we need to celebrate organizations that are led by persons with disability who are doing incredible amount of work. And these organizations have really transformed how INEC captures data of registered voters. So today, on our voters register, at least in the last registration cycle, INEC has data of persons with disability, their polling units and where they are located, and all these have come through the efforts of TAF Africa, the other organizations, Inclusive Friends, Cedar Seed Foundation. And so they're looking at this data and using the data to determine the deployment of assistive materials on the day of elections. Well, TAF Africa published a report, and part of the feedback was that there are some gaps in how that particular law is implemented. But if you have a disability commission that is established by virtue of the Prohibition Against Persons with Disability Act, that commission needs all the resources, to do what? To track this data in partnership with the National Planning or National Population Commission, because you need these data sets to actually plan. But if you have these data sets, what you use this data for equally matters, because does it actually tell you the economic profile of these individuals? Because it's not just disability. They also face economic inequality. And so if you're thinking about deploying social investment programs, you're thinking of welfarist interventions, are you also targeting persons with disability? And go and check businesses that are led with persons with disability. How many of them have benefited from interventions of government? Very, very few. Go and check. And so when you see governors talk about empowerment programs, giving a person with disability a wheelchair isn't an empowerment program. You've got to go beyond that. Invest in their businesses, because they also need what? Economic freedom.
We'll take a short break. And when we come back, the conversation continues. Vanessa is here, and then the microphone will go to the audience, and then we can be part of this conversation. We'll take a short break.
Join TAF Africa and disability inclusion advocates for a groundbreaking able to serve town hall broadcast live on Arise Television. Date, Monday 22nd April 2024. Time, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Hear inspiring stories and interactions on how we can create a more inclusive government together. Join the conversation via Zoom. Able to Serve Town Hall Meeting is brought to you by TAF Africa with support from the MacArthur Foundation.
I think CSOs can connect with other agencies of government so that the conversation gets a bit wider, and then they can accept some of the things we are discussing here.
So for me, I believe that information is key. And right before this, we spoke about research and, you know, how important that is. So I believe that with research and knowing actual facts and figures, you can go to, it's easier to start conversations by saying, like, look at how that fact where we said 1% of persons with disabilities are represented in our governance structures, but they make up 19% of the population. So when you have actual facts and figures and you go into rooms, and if you can show the disparity, you can show how poor the true situation really is, especially when you do comparative analysis with different countries. We don't even need to go as far as Europe. We can start with Africa here, West Africa, moving on to the rest of the continent, and we can show that we are falling behind. You know, it's heard a lot, we call ourselves the giants of Africa, but in terms of inclusiveness, we are really, really on the back burner. So it is quite unfortunate, if I will say, that we are the giant of Africa by population, but at the back when it comes to inclusive policies and practices in our nation.
The conversation should be nationwide. Able to Serve should be the clarion call across the country. Right now, I'm shifting the conversation to the audience. Raise your hand, identify yourself. The microphone will come to you so that we can begin to discuss. Can we give a microphone, please?
Okay, my name is Florence Marcos. I'm a lawyer and the co-founder of Amputee Coalition of Nigeria. Okay. Thank you very much for the insightful conversations. I just hope that your words will stir the hearts and minds of those in the position of power to take meaningful action towards inclusivity and accessibility for all. That being said, I have a question, and my question is, how can we effectively measure the progress on the inclusion of persons with disabilities in government, both at the national and the subnational level? And there is just a follow-up. Are there specific data points or metrics organizations of persons with disabilities can use to track the progress and hold government accountable? Thank you.
Well, Samson, put that in your wallet. While I get two more. Do you have any problems with that question? Okay. Do we have another person? All right. Okay, so you can kick off while the other people make up their minds. Okay, Barrister Rex, quickly.
Thank you very much. My question would be, what key policy recommendations or initiatives should persons with disabilities prioritize to enhance their representation and participation in government decision-making governance? Thank you very much.
I'm sure that that's already in your bag, isn't it? All right, so Samson.
In terms of measuring progress, first, we need to understand that the public governance is very complex, and there are different sectors. So I'll give a classic example. Now, if you look at the bill, the Act, the Prohibition Against Persons, Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Act, yes, it provides that government institutions need to do what? Need to create ramps. So if you want to measure accessibility, perhaps you look at a particular government agency and check how is this particular government agency ensuring that they redesign the government buildings in a way that it's accessible to persons with disability. The second is about recruitment of persons with disability into institutions, whether public or private institutions. You can also check in the number of recruitments that have been done over a particular period of time, how many persons with disabilities were employed or recruited. If you also check the budget, so if you're engaging National Assembly, is to ask yourself, first, does the National Assembly have a committee on disability? Yes, they do. If you're at the state level, do the state houses of assemblies have what? Persons with disabilities committee. But also check the appropriation and how much goes to persons with disability. But also note that disability is a cross-cutting issue. So you can find disability in either agriculture or in infrastructure or whatever. Just ensure that as you're looking at the budget, you're asking yourself, is this budget responsive to persons with disability? If you're saying a government institution is required to redesign a public institution, it needs public appropriation to do so. So what percentage of that money is going to be used or is allocated for redesigning, public buildings? So these are practical ways, but I just want to advise that think about this as a very complex entity. Look at a sector and focus and narrow down on that sector, evaluating and assessing whether it's the level of inclusion, the level of accessibility, or even accountability or responsiveness to the needs and priorities of persons with disabilities.
In answering that question, let's take it in a minute. Vanessa, you also chip in your own word. In 1 minute, we'll round up this segment.
Okay, I just want to add, in terms of governmental agencies that we're talking about, we have a commission for persons with disability. How many of us in the room, in the audience, or at home, or those who are working with disability, actually know what is contained in the Disability Act? So it's important to familiarize yourselves with that and be able to hold this commission that is particular on disability with, hold them accountable. And then when we are talking of data, I think TAF Africa has done a lot. And all of those NGOs that were specific with disability have done a lot in terms of movement. In the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, during the elections, even from off-cycle election, we had to follow up. The report that we're getting from the field was to say, were there ramps at the PUs? Were there, in the places, what was the attention to persons with disability? We found out in Kuchingoro or somewhere around in FCT, we found out there was, that is the voting platforms were too high for a number of persons with disability. The next election, they corrected that. And so the feedbacks, very, very important. The key policy recommendations, there have been policies who went through the Disability Act, and there's so much that we can discover in terms of what is there. The ones we have now, how are we engaging with that? I think for every segment, we need that, and I want to say a big thank you.
Okay.
To
Vanessa, a minute.
MacArthur again. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So for me, the final thing I want to say is that in interacting with all the stakeholders involved in these processes, we need to give precise and realistic metrics and milestones. If we're talking about accessibility, physical accessibility, it's not to say, oh, all government buildings should have ramps within the next 1 year. And when we talk about these precise and realistic expectations, we need to put in monitoring and evaluation systems in place. So if we have spoken to a specific arm of government and they said, we will do such and such by such and such time, there should be a method by which we as the public should be able to say, oh, it is due date for what you said you would do, and we're expecting a progress report. Even if it's not 100% complete, we should have some form of movement from the time you said. And finally, accountability. I think one thing that we need to push for is accountability. The people who we have put in places of leadership need to be accountable to us, the people. We need to hold them accountable to all their promises, and there needs to be a method by which, if they are not accountable to us, we should be able to hold them accountable.
Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for this panel. We want to thank the three of you for being here. The conversation came up with the barriers and what we can do. Now we'll begin to look at the strategies for inclusiveness in government in our next panel discussion. We'll take a break now. Thank you very much. My next panel, the extreme man over there, is a man that I said earlier I've known for over 25 years, an extremely cerebral young man. Dr. Chike Okogu, I welcome you. You're welcome, everyone. Thank you very much. And very next to him is the founder, Cedar Seed, an NGO for women with disabilities. I'd like to welcome here Lois Outer. And then here is Barrister Rex Erame, chairman of the FCT Albinism Association. He's here with us. I welcome you. So let me kick off with a lady. You heard our conversation earlier in terms of what CSOs can do, what the society can do. But what specific challenges do you have as a PWD person facing in terms of securing inclusion in our political environment? You can.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, for me, attitudinal barrier is a big challenge in the disability community because people tend to see the disability first before the person. The stereotypes, the discrimination, exclusion, and underrepresentation of persons with disabilities in every sector is affecting us. The first panel talked about the barriers: infrastructural, institutional, medical, and the major one is the attitude towards persons with disabilities. If Nigeria believe in us, they will reserve opportunities in every sector for persons with disabilities. We won't be shouting and advocating and keep shouting because the right thing is done. Article 10 of United Nations Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities talks about our rights. Goal 10 of SDGs talks about reducing inequalities. And I like the slogan, leave no one behind. How are we investing in the lives of persons with disabilities? How are we incorporating our issues? We need to move from the charity model to the social model, and from the social model to the human right model. And the social inclusion models, which include exclusion, segregation, integration, and inclusion. As it is, Nigeria is still operating on the integration model. We need to move. Give us the platforms, give us the opportunities, and we will perform exceedingly well. Thank you.
I love the way your face was looking while you were talking. It showed that you meant what you were saying, you know. But Chike, I wanted you to just tag along what you just said. The challenges that your group face, will you say it's attitudinal or legal, or a combination of both?
First, I think it's a combination of both. Attitudinal, because
you stretch it back to cultural. You all have seen families where children with disabilities, and I'll break it down, hide them, visitors they come. Because before now, people saw disability as a curse. But I'm proud to say here that my disability is a blessing. A round of applause for God, who made me a person with disabilities. I say this because today, disability has moved to the rights model, and that is where the law kicks in. 15, 20 years ago, when we started, I joined the family 17 years ago. On my way to the Abuja airport, I sustained spinal cord injuries in a car crash. Just like Antiana said, it can happen to anybody. So any of you here, but it's not your portion like we say in Nigeria. So I joined this family, and at that time, we faced the first phase of power. I'm referring to Marshall Gans and his work, organizing people, power, and change. It was a master-servant relationship back then. We were literally begging to be recognized. In 2011, Lois and I did a TV commercial for, we actually produced it with our, it was our own, we sponsored it, just for INEC to include persons with disabilities in January of 2011. Today, INEC is now doing what they should do. So we moved from that first phase of power, like my fine face, to the second phase of power, which is who decides who sits on the table. And through advocacy and agitation, and everybody seated in this room, I mean, fantastic job from Yodo and a lot of friends. We now got our commission. But you see, where power lies is not about giving you a commission. Where the power lies is who decides who gets what, who wins, and who loses. And that's the third phase of power. And I like this program thanks to TAF Africa. This program is helping us tell those in governance that there are some people who are losing here. And it is time to recognize that 16% World Health Organization statistics of your population, over 32 million people, give me a break, are losing. And guess what? You are also losing as a government, because 16% of your gross domestic product is not being harnessed. There are lots of talents amongst persons with disabilities. We are able to pay taxes. We're not asking you to give us tax breaks. We run businesses. We do our work. All of us who run NGOs, who work in our NGOs, we pay taxes. No, the government does not ask us whether you're a PWD organization or you're even a person with disabilities. We do our tax returns. Abuja FCT can bear me testimony at least. I pay my taxes. So if you do not empower us, and like my brother Samson said earlier, it's not about giving commission. First, you have to empower that commission, fund them. But you see, the people that are losing, that's this community of persons with disabilities. You also have to make sure that you empower them in such a manner that they can do a lot of work. Creativity is so, there's so much, I mean, Rex is a lawyer. He pays his taxes. There's so many of us. So give us economic empowerment. And we're not saying, look, banks should go into real banking. CBN should have there was a policy that was supposed to support persons with disabilities. Some billions of money was set aside. It's all audio. But you see, if you give persons with disabilities, you can see how we struggle to get on the platform here. So the barriers are already there. What we're saying is, take out all the barriers. Give us access to financing. We will pay back. I mean, if you give me money now, where the leg to run? I mean, the person who is blind here, where you want wrong go? Do you understand what I'm saying? So you get more by investing in these people. Because the University of Wisconsin, in one of his research reports, said, and I quote, that the things that push persons with disabilities is their ability to have opportunities, responsibilities, and empowerment. We at my organization, Center for Ability, Rehabilitation, and Empowerment, we added a C to it, which we call now CORE. The C stands for courage. Every person with disability is here. For them to even come here today and sit in this room, it took a lot of courage. I don't want to tell you the challenges that I faced, like Lois, like many of us, to get up every morning to do what we do. As I sit here, I'm sitting on a pressure sore that I've been treating for 4 years. I have to sit because I have to walk. And if I don't walk, I don't feed my family. So it's a lot. Legal, don't forget, and attitudinal. Let me drop the mic for now.
You know, Chike, you give me hope. You're saying all of these things. It's touching our hearts, but you're saying it with a smile on your face. You know, so that gives us some hope. Rex, I'm happy you're a lawyer. So beyond advocacy, like Chike said, what practical steps can be taken for inclusivity of people with disability into governance?
Thank you very much. For me, I think going beyond advocacy, we need to be looking at, most importantly, compliance. The Disability Act has made provisions for inclusion of persons with disabilities, especially as it regards to employment. It's made provision for the inclusion of at least 5% of government establishments and parastatals to ensure that persons with disabilities are employed. So for me, my take would be that we should focus more on compliance with this act. The act has made a holistic provision where persons with disabilities can be included in their facets of life and made sure that enough of persons with disabilities are employed. So beyond advocacy, compliance is very, very important. Secondly, persons with disabilities now need to come out. We should be able to, as a matter of fact and a matter of urgency, disregard whatever may try to impede us from participation in government and in all facets of life. In terms of self-esteem, it's very, very important that we embrace ourselves and know that what we face as persons with disabilities is more or less, should be seen as a more positive drive rather than a negative drive. So self-esteem is very, very important.
Thank you very much. Lois, I want to come to you. Because somebody who's just watching us speak here would think what we are discussing is about political appointment, that you want to be part of governance. But beyond political appointment, how more do you think government can empower people with disability?
We have many graduates with disabilities. The 5% reservation of employment and skills opportunities have not been implemented. From the federal level to the state level to the local government level. We have been sidelined. And aside from employment, Chike talked about economic empowerment. What about education? Many parents with children with disabilities cannot send their children to school due to inadequate, accessible educational facilities and services. I just met a lady 3 days ago here in Transcorp in the elevator. with her child with cerebral palsy. And she shared her story. She said the discrimination that a week ago in the church, her child sat next to a teenager. The teenager carried his chair away and left the place. That she's planning to leave Nigeria to the US so her child can be able to attend a school because no facilities. She tried Abuja, she tried Lagos, she tried Port Harcourt. She could not get enrolled. Of her child of 10 years old. This is a story about a child with disability. So you see education, you see investment, engagement, employment. They are very, very key in the lives of persons with disabilities. Let's be frank, let's be honest in our discussion. As a government, as a CSO, how many persons with disabilities are in your board, are in your top management, or even volunteers? Let's start from there. We need to do a lot for persons with disabilities. Thank you.
You know, you used the word, you said, let's be frank. And at that point, you frowned your face. You know, Chike, I'm coming to you. Lois talked about all of the other areas beyond advocacy, education and all that. Government is also telling us that they are doing something about it. You are an academic. So from a monitoring and evaluation point of view, how do you rate what government is doing right now?
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Monitoring and evaluation, let me come from there, is comprised of three things: input, output, and outcomes. 15%, the law, the Disability Act, says at least 5% of employment, at least, should be for persons with disabilities. If President Bola Tinubu had appointed 5% of us into his cabinet, state governors do same, local government chairmen do same, you would have created over 8,000 jobs. Personal story, I was a member of the board of Shopee and I represented persons with disabilities. And I sit here and tell you, the 25-year master plan of railway that you have today, I was part of it with Sheyi Shijuade, the former MD of Nigerian Railway Corporation. We sat down and we designed what 25 years would look like. And all the railway lines had components for persons with disabilities because I was the head of the Shopee railway component subcommittee back then. At that time, there was no law. But we bulldozed our way and we did some things. So the point I'm trying to make is don't appoint people to be SA on disabilities for the purpose of SA. You can use them in other areas and they will be very useful to you. I quote, you know me, I like to quote authorities so that they will not say that I said. Thomas Peters, one of my favorite authors, in one of his write-ups, titled Like It or Lump It, Politics is Life. He says politics is life. Politics is the basis for real can-do, as opposed to the imaginary sort brought to you by strong leaders. Every relationship with friend, spouse, or business associate is political, and it rests on lots of give, some take, and the sharing of assumptions. What are we trying to say here? No regrets. Persons with disabilities should engage in politics. You see, the Electoral Act, we all worked on it. It was in this same transcript, may or shall. After we finished the may or shall, and it became shall, what do we have to do? We have electoral guidelines where political parties are supposed to do certain things to include persons with disabilities. How many political parties are doing it? Because the guidelines are there, but because the guidelines are not, in quote, law, they don't see it as a problem. But if we had done what the guidelines, so we want to plead that as we go forward, guidelines should be changed into policies that are acts of law. Mr. President has done his own part, appointing his SSA on disabilities, but it doesn't end there. He should go further. Why shouldn't we have a minister? Look, if you have a minister of the Federal Republic today who is a person with disabilities, airlines will not be battling with me on how to fly us. I get calls every day from my colleagues about how to fly. I have reached out to the Minister of Aviation. He knows me, he's my very good friend. What has he done for the persons with disabilities? Can't we travel? We're not poor, we fly. FCT is bringing buses the other day. I went and inspected those buses parked at the Eagle Square there. They are not disability friendly. None of them is. You're talking about CNG buses. How many of those CNG buses? I like what Mr. Wike said in his last broadcast. You know, he said those who acquired these buses when he wasn't there, he wasn't sure that. But I'm telling him now that those buses are not disability friendly. But he promised that now that there is a law, he will ensure that persons with disabilities are carried along in the next transportation phase. But here in Abuja, how many people, my colleagues here, can you travel easily by road? The answer is no. But from most of the developed countries, even in Ghana, let me not go too far. Ghana, South Africa, Uganda, Kenya, I've been to all these places. Life is easy. As soon as you step out from the airplane, from the plane, the air-conditioned van that will come and carry you out of the aircraft in Togo, let me not go too far, in Lomé, Togo here. In Nigeria, I am the only person who has provided an ambi lift, and yet it is subused. I mean, the challenges are enormous. In a country as rich as Nigeria, thank you very much. Let me not go too far.
You know, I'm happy you don't want to go too far, because I just looked into the audience. Some people want to start crying. So we'll take a break from here. We'll come back.
Time 6 to 7:30 p.m. Hear inspiring stories and interactions on how we can create a more inclusive government together. Join the conversation via Zoom. Able to Serve Town Hall meeting is brought to you by TAF Africa with support from the MacArthur Foundation.
Welcome back. I'm happy about the participation of the audience. The audience is quite rapt in terms of attention. But Rex, I'll give you one final question, then we'll go to the audience. Just close your eyes and engage the time gear and push it forward. And imagine a Nigeria where people living with disability are fully integrated into governance. What kind of Nigeria will you see?
Wow. For me, I think that would be the best thing that would happen to Nigeria as a country. A lot of work has been done. It is important that government begins to take us seriously. I see Nigeria in some years from now, especially under the auspices of persons with disabilities. I see a Nigeria that is going to be very, very disability friendly. I see a Nigeria where issues pertaining to what Mr. Chike has raised will not happen again, especially with respect to the aviation, transportation sector generally. I see a Nigeria where, when disability matters are put in proper perspective, it will be a safe haven for every person with disability. Thank you very much.
Well, a safe haven. You recall what happened at KFC at the MM2 when Senator Gbenga Daniel's son on a wheelchair went there and he was denied service, and they went there and closed the place. You know, but let's take the questions. 4 people, very quickly. Microphone, let's move. Yes, there's a hand beside you there.
Good evening.
Okay.
My name is Enyai Pele.
Okay.
I'm a mind coach. My niche is in personal development and mind mastery. But I've listened to you speak, and I've seen your levels of awareness, exposure, but most of all, acceptance. And I believe that it's that acceptance that has given you, the leeway to make the kind of giant strides that you have made. So what is it that you can really do to bring the community to that level of acceptance? Because I believe that a lot of people are still struggling to accept the situation, and that struggle builds a resistance. But of course, no man is an island. So what can you do to, bring people to that place of acceptance so that they can, join to make the community an easier place for them?
Well, Chike, that question was given to you. Hide it in your pocket. The next question, please.
Thank you to my big brother and my twin sister. That was an awesome deliberation. I remember Humble Self Betty movie. I want to just ask, what measures can be implemented to ensure that the gains made in advancing disability inclusion in government appointments are sustained and further expanded upon in the future?
Los, that one should be hiding in your pocket. All right.
Okay, my name is Donald Onanka. I'm a writer and filmmaker, and I work in the art and orange economic space. So I want to ask, considering the diverse needs of persons with disabilities, how can government appointment be structured in such a way that will take into cognizance of different disability types and experiences? Thank you.
Well, this conversation, I would have wanted us to be here for 3 weeks without going home and discussing these matters so that you will hear. But unfortunately, please, you have a minute and a half each. Take the question and your concluding comments. I'll start with you, Chike.
Thank you very much. My darling sister, you're a mind coach. And here I'm speaking to all persons with disabilities. It's about your mind. The definition of the mind, M-I-N-D, is to move in new directions. We're in the renewed hope agenda season. Politics is over. It is time for governance. We're not where we want to be yet, as Rex said, but we're definitely not where we used to be. It is an ongoing journey. I see disability as fun. Can we move in new directions, find new things to do, new problems to solve? I tell you, every PWD, find a problem that touches PWDs and find a solution to it. Move in that new direction, you will have a purpose to wake up every morning to solve that problem. And when you do that, you create courage, opportunities, responsibilities, and empowerment for yourself. I rest my case.
Lois, Chike, in resting his case, has taken 30 seconds of your time. 1 minute.
Yes. So my sister Betty, keep using your voice to ask for your right. Hold government accountable in ensuring that seats are reserved for persons with disabilities, not only by appointment, but by elections. All the strategies we need to put in place, from elections, after elections, and every other action we need to take, let's take it. If it needs to protest, let's protest. ADA was gotten by protest. They slept for days in their parliament. And today, over 30 years, they are celebrating ADA. That's Americans Disability Act. So if they could do that, let's amplify our voices. Let's collaborate. Let's engage the duty bearers and ask them questions. Why are you not including us? We are humans. We are people. We have our rights. So we need our space to be given to us. So keep moving, keep advocating, keep asking questions until the right thing is done.
You know, they say still waters run deep. Lois, in her quietness, is fairy. Also, Rex, finally, you 1 minute.
Thank you very much. With respect to the question my brother, Mr. Donald, asked, we need to continue to preach inclusion. With respect to policies that affect persons with disabilities, government needs to continue to ensure that we are carried along. We need to always be on the front burner when these policies are being made. It affects us. We wear the shoes. We know where it pitches. So when these policies are being made, our presence and our contribution is very, very key and important. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Let's appreciate them. Let's put our hands together for them, ladies and gentlemen. We shall be going to the man that has brought all of us here, Jack Ekpele, to begin to round up.
Thank you. May all the staff of TAF Africa please join me here. We want to thank our sponsor, MacArthur Foundation. Thank you. Thank you, Plaque, for helping us. We want to thank my very good friend, Samson of Yaga, Africa. Dr. Toby on the way, Ene Obi. Florence, Chike, Lois, Vanessa, my family, my wife, and my son who is here, my team, every one of them had worked. We started this whole process by Friday afternoon, and today we have made it. There is no me without all of you standing here. So I appreciate you. And finally, thank you, Arise, and ultimately, thank you, Lord, for what you have done. God bless you. Good night. Remember, we are able to serve.
Thank you. There's no more to add there. Wonderful. Let's put our hands together for this amazing panel. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. We thank you very, very much. This man, Jack Ekpele, is a goal-getter. You won't believe that he called me at about 8 p.m. last night. And he told me, I don't know what your program is tomorrow, but you must be here.